My name is Marisa Fernandez, and this is my Intro to Game Design Artist Dialogue assignment on The Air, an immersive auditory experience. Air is influenced and inspired by this piece of art by Romero Bearden called Outcourse. It is an etching representing the African American group of musicians playing jazz. The piece is supposed to represent jazz music and the influence it had, as well as the feelings it evoked in the listeners. This is shown by the bright and vibrant colors and shapes used throughout the image. Jazz music is supposed to invoke a very happy tone for the people listening and to encourage them to dance. Also, jazz music is a very creative genre. It mainly relies on improv from the musicians. Throughout the rise of jazz music, it brought with it the rise of the entertainment industry as a whole. One of the main aspects it brought to popularity is radio. Radio was originally a medium made for mainly rich individuals. Only people who could afford radios could enjoy the medium. However, as the 1920s and 1930s progressed, radios became a lot cheaper to produce and to sell, and many more families had access to it. This, in turn, led to the rise of this entertainment industry. More channels were broadcasting specific genres of music. There were news broadcasts and even broadcasts of stories, specifically targeted towards children. You overlook one screen. You overlook a radio. The main aesthetic will be in black and white. However, this aesthetic will change throughout the visual sequences that I will go over later. There is no established character On the Air, as it is made for the players to insert themselves into the game itself. They get to choose what to listen to. They get to choose what to record and what to experience. There's no set goal for them to go to a specific channel and listen to a specific broadcast. If they want to learn about the history at the time, they have the choice to do so. If they just want to listen to music and enjoy it in the background while they do other things, just using it as your own personal historical radio, you're more than welcome to as well. There are two different ways to control, through an Xbox controller and through PC controls. This is made because using an Xbox controller allows the player to have a more interesting experience with the game. This is the main interface, represented by this mock-up of the radio. There are 3 knobs on the bottom of the screen. With the Xbox controller, the player is able to switch between the different knobs by tilting the left analog stick. And they are able to tune through a control scheme that I'll represent through this video that will be played in momentarily. The knob that they are tuning will be represented by a highlighted aura around it. The reason why a person would want to tune is so that way they can access different channels and listen to different things. The switches on the side are for 2 specific reasons. One, to also help with the tuning in order for people to find specific channels, and also in case the radio seems to malfunction or have difficulties. Sometimes the radio will spark, and the player will need to go to the specific switches and try to move them around in order to remedy the issue and prevent the radio from malfunctioning. There's also a record book. This record book will mainly come in handy after you experience these visual sequences. What are these visual sequences, you may be wondering? When you are listening to a specific story or listening to music, the screen will be lit up with color, and the player will have either opportunities to interact with the visual experience or just enjoy the show. Here's what the main controls for tuning the radio will look like on an Xbox controller. There are triggers, buttons, and bumpers on the controller. In order to tune the knob that you are currently selecting in a certain direction, you're going to have to hold down a trigger and a bumper and move the specific analog. If you want to turn the knob to the left, you have to hold down the right bumper and the right trigger and move the left analog stick to the left. That's if you're tuning it to the left. My apologies. So if you want to turn the knob to the left, you hold down the right bumper, the right trigger, and move the left analog stick to the left. If you want to tune it to the right, you hold down the right bumper and the right trigger, and move the analog stick on the right to the right. The main gameplay mechanics are going to be tuning and listening to the radio, flipping the switches, keeping record, and the visual experiences. Keeping the records is mainly so that way if people are listening to a news broadcast, for instance, they can open up the record book and they can learn about the historical event being broadcasted in more depth. This is so that way the people who are using this game can learn about the American history at the time. Other things can also be found in the record book as well, like, for instance, musicians and their albums and discography. The visual experiences are mainly inspired by this Synthesia scene in Ratatouille. The entire screen is supposed to light up with color, and depending on what it is you're listening to, you can interact with it in multiple ways. Let's say you're listening to a story about cowboys. You can interact with it by moving the cowboy on the horse around. The player will be told what control schemes they can use through a dialogue text box that will pop up in the bottom of the screen during the visual sequence. Here's a representation of what I mean when it comes to these visual sequences.
Combine one flavor with another, and something new was created.
Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you all have a great day.